My stepdad stole my identity and opened credit cards in my name. Now my credit is ruined. When I confronted him, he spat in my face. I never had a reason to check my credit score until a couple of months ago, other than when I got a credit card in 2021. At that time, I had a 745. When I went to purchase my first car on my own in April, the dealership told me my credit score was 541. I had no idea why since I barely used my credit card and always paid it off in full every month on time. I put off buying the car while I looked into my credit and was mortified when I saw 2 other credit cards on my report, both of which were nearly maxed out and with probably 15 late payments between the 2 of them. When I asked my mom and stepdad about it, my stepdad said he opened the cards when I went to college because I stopped paying rent at the house. When I lived there during my 2 years at CC, I paid them $500 per month rent. I stopped paying when I moved out. We ended up arguing about it, and he said I owed it to him for the years I didn't pay rent, literally talking about 8-12 to grade, and to just drop it. When I told him he can't do that without my permission, he said he doesn't need permission and spit in my face. Like a full-on spit on my face. I left crying and my mom called to apologize. We talked a little bit, and she told me he had something similar happen to him in the past. Obviously, that's no excuse, and I told her I'd have to go to the police about the accounts. She said to slow down and really think about if that's what I want to do. I hung up the phone. I wish I'd known about the accounts sooner. I still think I'm going to call the police, but is there any other way of handling this? Relevant comments. Commenter. The moment he spit in my face, I would have drove right to the police station. He doesn't respect you at all. 1. To open CC's in your name. 2. To spit on you. And is your mom okay with this? Seems she doesn't care too much either, if she's trying to sway you in a different direction. OP. I don't think she's okay with the spitting, probably not all right with the credit cards, but not so against it that she wants me going to the police. OOP shared an experience they witnessed related to the spit part and how it might or might not be a charge. OP. I saw this firsthand in college. My best friend was spit on by some random guy. The police were called, and there was video. The guy denied everything, even though the spit was literally still on her face. To their credit, the police took a swab of it and identified the other guy. Video couldn't be accessed until the manager came in on Monday. The issue was the police couldn't prove that very second it was his spit. She was given the chance to follow up with the prosecutor's office. She did that Monday. Probably 6 weeks later, she gets a letter in the mail saying they were not going to prosecute with the reason other. She filed a FOIA for the report, and we read through it. The police seemed to do a thorough job and obtained video when they could. According to the report, the video showed the guy lunging at her with his face, and she reacted by jerking back and wiping her face. Someone who she knew who works as an attorney said since it was a battery, it would be a violent crime, and they probably had a backlog of violent crime cases and decided not to prosecute a violent crime with no injury. 100% the prosecutor's office dropped the ball. I just have a feeling it would be the same in my case. Update 1. I made the police report for both identity theft and the spitting. They said it was 2 separate incidents, the identity theft a felony and the spitting a misdemeanor. About a week afterward, my dad comes storming into my workplace. He's always had anger issues, but this is a new low for him. He starts screaming at me for calling the police, and a security guard comes in and tells him to leave. The security guard meant well, but she's probably 23 years old and small, and my dad is 6 feet 2 inches and has been in plenty of fights in his life. My manager told me to go in the back, and he followed me back there. I locked myself in the bathroom, and he just kept banging on the door for probably 3 to 4 minutes screaming at me. I called my mom, and she tried calling him. Eventually, a police officer gets there and goes to handcuff my dad. He fought him and 2 other officers pile on him. He's arrested on aggravated battery and aggravated resisting charges. He was released from jail the next day. No idea why, but the county decided not to prosecute him. I spoke with an officer a couple days later about a possible order of protection, and I was told the county usually doesn't prosecute people fighting cops unless an officer gets injured so badly they might have to medically retire. What reminded me about this post was that I checked my credit yesterday, and one of the accounts has come off. Still waiting for the other one, but I think it's just a matter of time. My dad hasn't said a word to me since, and my mom refuses to talk about it. The nice thing is the rest of my family is completely on my side with this. My credit should recover pretty soon, but I think my relationship with my dad is pretty much over. I'm fine with that. He's a toxic person. I'm just hoping nothing else happens. Comments. Commenter. Where do you live where someone doesn't get prosecuted for resisting arrest and assaulting police officers? OP. Chicago suburbs. I was told one of the officers has a black eye. They just don't prosecute unless it's a major injury. Commenter. The county usually doesn't prosecute people fighting cops. That seems like self-sabotage. Commenter. You've done everything right. You absolutely need a restraining order. Not because he resisted arrest, but because he is a clear threat to your safety. He has already spit on you, tracked you down at work, and screamed and banged on the door. Clearly, he is a threat to your safety. Update 2. So, things have gotten even crazier since my last update. A few days after my dad's outburst at my workplace, I decided to apply for that order of protection. The process was pretty straightforward, but the wait was nerve-wracking. The judge granted it, and my dad was officially served. I thought things might calm down after that, but I was wrong. One night, around 2 a.m., I heard someone banging on my apartment door. I was terrified. I peeked through the peephole and saw my dad standing there, looking unhinged. He was shouting my name, demanding I come out and talk to him. I immediately called the police. While I was on the phone, my dad started kicking the door, trying to force it open. I was scared out of my mind. The police arrived in what felt like forever, but was probably only a few minutes. They found my dad still trying to break in. He was arrested again, this time for violating the order of protection and attempted burglary. The officers assured me he wouldn't be getting out anytime soon, but I still felt a pit in my stomach. Fast forward to last week, I get a call from my mom. She sounded upset and told me my dad had been released on bail. Apparently, his lawyer argued that he wasn't a flight risk or a danger to the community. I couldn't believe it. I felt like I was living in some twisted reality where my safety didn't matter. I've been staying with a friend since then, trying to lay low and stay safe. My mom keeps calling, asking me to drop everything and make amends with my dad. She doesn't seem to understand that his behavior is completely unacceptable and dangerous. I told her I can't just pretend like nothing happened. On a slightly better note, I finally got the second fraudulent account removed from my credit report. My score is slowly going back up, and I'm hoping to get that car I wanted soon. But honestly, the relief of fixing my credit is overshadowed by the fear of what my dad might do next. I don't know what my next move should be. I feel like I've done everything I can to protect myself, but he keeps finding ways to make my life a living hell. I'm considering moving to a different state, starting fresh somewhere far away from all this chaos. Anyway, I'll keep you all updated if anything else happens. Thanks for all the support and advice. So far, it's been a lifeline in this mess. Update 3. I thought things had reached a peak, but I guess I underestimated my dad's determination. After the latest incident, I decided to stay with my best friend, Emily, in a neighboring town. I felt a bit safer there, surrounded by people who had my back. A few days into my stay, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. It was my dad. He was yelling, saying he knew where I was and that I couldn't hide from him forever. I hung up immediately and called the police, filing another report. They suggested changing my number and beefing up security at Emily's place. Emily and her family were incredibly supportive, but I hated feeling like I was putting them in danger. I decided to look into moving out of state. I started applying for jobs in places as far away as I could find. It wasn't an easy decision, but it seemed like the only way to escape this nightmare. I got a few promising leads, and one company in Seattle seemed really interested. But before I could finalize anything, things took another turn. One morning, I woke up to find my car had been vandalized. The tires were slashed, and there was a note on the windshield saying, "You can run, but you can't hide." My heart sank. I knew it had to be my dad. I called the police again, but without any witnesses or cameras, there wasn't much they could do. I was at my wit's end. Every step I took to get away seemed to bring him closer. My mom called, crying, saying my dad was spiraling and that he needed help. She begged me to talk to him, to try to calm him down. I told her I couldn't, that I needed to prioritize my safety. That evening, I received a call from the company in Seattle offering me a job. It felt like a lifeline. I accepted immediately and started making plans to leave as soon as possible. Emily's family helped me pack and even drove me to the airport. Now, I'm sitting in my new apartment in Seattle, trying to breathe and process everything that's happened. It's a weird mix of relief and lingering fear. I've got security cameras installed, and I'm keeping my new address private. I've blocked my dad's number and have minimal contact with my mom. She's still trying to mediate, but I've made it clear that I need space. My credit is slowly improving, and I'm finally getting back on my feet. But even here, thousands of miles away, I can't help but look over my shoulder. I'm trying to focus on rebuilding my life, but the fear is always there, lurking. I hope this is the end of the nightmare, but I know better than to let my guard down completely. Update 4. I thought moving to Seattle would be the end of the drama, but it seems like the past just won't let go. I've been here for a couple of months now, settling into my new job and trying to rebuild some sense of normalcy. Things were going well, and I was starting to feel like I could breathe again. Then, out of nowhere, I got an email from my mom. It It was long and rambling, full of apologies and excuses for my dad's behavior. She mentioned that he had been drinking heavily and was in and out of therapy. She begged me to come back, saying that the family was falling apart without me. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I was finally starting to feel safe, and I wasn't about to throw that away. But the email left me feeling uneasy. I knew I needed to stay vigilant. A week later, my phone buzzed with a notification from one of my security cameras. My heart stopped when I saw the footage. It was my dad, standing outside my apartment building. He was just standing there, staring up at the windows. I called the police immediately, but by the time they arrived, he was gone. They took a report and promised to patrol the area more frequently. The next few days were a blur of anxiety and sleepless nights. I double-checked all my locks and even considered staying in a hotel. I felt like a prisoner in my own home. Then, one evening, I got a call from an unknown number. It was a detective from back home. He told me that my dad had been involved in a serious car accident. He was drunk and had collided with another vehicle. He survived but was in critical condition. The other driver was also injured but was expected to recover. I didn't know how to feel. Part of me was relieved that he might finally be forced to face the consequences of his actions, but another part of me was just exhausted. I felt like this nightmare would never end. I decided to take a leave of absence from work and flew back home. I needed to see my mom and make sure she was okay. When I arrived at the hospital, she was a wreck. She hugged me tightly, crying and apologizing over and over. I stayed with her for a while, trying to offer some comfort, even though I felt completely numb. My dad was unconscious, hooked up to various machines. Seeing him like that was surreal. He looked so small and fragile, a stark contrast to the menacing figure he had become in my life. I didn't know if I could ever forgive him, but I also didn't want to carry this hatred forever. After a few days, I returned to Seattle. I'm back in my apartment now, trying to piece my life together again. I don't know what's going to happen with my dad. The doctors aren't sure if he'll fully recover, and there's talk of long-term rehabilitation. For now, I'm focusing on myself. I've started therapy to help deal with the trauma and anxiety. My job has been incredibly supportive, and my friends here have been amazing. I'm taking things one day at a time, trying to find some semblance of peace in this chaos. Update 5. About a month after returning to Seattle, I received a call from my mom. She was frantic, telling me that my dad had regained consciousness. He was still in the hospital, but making a slow recovery. She insisted that he wanted to see me, to apologize and make amends. I wasn't sure how to feel about it. I knew I needed closure, but I also wasn't ready to face him. After a lot of thought, I decided to write him a letter instead. I poured out everything: my anger, my hurt, my confusion. I told him how his actions had shattered my trust and how deeply he had wounded me. It wasn't easy, but it felt necessary. I sent the letter to my mom and asked her to give it to him when she thought he was ready. A couple of weeks went by with no response. Then, out of the blue, I got a letter back from my dad. His handwriting was shaky, and the letter was full of apologies and regret. He admitted to his wrongdoings, blaming his behavior on his own unresolved issues and alcoholism. He said he wanted to make things right, to rebuild our relationship. I wasn't sure if I believed him, but it was a start. In the meantime, I've been making significant progress in therapy. My therapist helped me navigate my feelings and encouraged me to set boundaries. We also worked on strategies to deal with the anxiety and fear that still lingered. I was slowly starting to feel more in control of my life. Then, one night, I got another security alert from my cameras. This time, it wasn't my dad. It was my mom, standing outside my building, looking up at my apartment. She didn't knock or try to get in. She just stood there for a while and then left. I called her immediately, and she admitted she had flown out to see me but was too scared to face me after everything that happened. We met up the next day at a nearby coffee shop. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days. We talked for hours, and she finally opened up about her struggles. She confessed that she felt torn between her loyalty to my dad and her love for me. She apologized for not protecting me and for trying to keep the peace at the cost of my well-being. I told her I loved her, but I needed her to understand that I couldn't have my dad in my life right now. She nodded, tears streaming down her face, and promised to support me in any way she could. It was a tough conversation, but it felt like a step in the right direction. After she left, I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. I knew my family dynamics were forever changed, but I also felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to heal, even if it took time. A few days later, I received a call from the Seattle police. They had found my dad's car parked near my building again. He wasn't there, but it was clear he had been around. They advised me to consider a restraining order in Washington as well, just to be safe. I'm still trying to process everything. It feels like I'm constantly on edge, waiting for the next thing to happen. But I'm also trying to focus on the positives. My credit is almost fully restored. I'm doing well at my job, and I've built a supportive network of friends here in Seattle. Update 6. It had been a few weeks since the incident with my dad's car near my building. I had taken the police's advice and filed for a restraining order in Washington. I felt a little more secure, but the constant anxiety was wearing me down. Then, out of nowhere, I received a letter from a law firm. My dad was suing me for defamation and emotional distress, claiming that my accusations had ruined his life and reputation. I couldn't believe it. After everything he had put me through, now he was trying to play the victim? I felt a mix of anger and disbelief. I immediately called my attorney, who assured me we had a strong case. The whole situation felt surreal. I had done everything I could to protect myself, and now I had to defend myself in court against my own father. The stress was overwhelming. Meanwhile, my mom kept trying to mediate, calling and texting me constantly. She claimed my dad was genuinely remorseful and that he only filed the lawsuit out of desperation, hoping it would force a reconciliation. I told her that reconciliation was impossible under these circumstances and that he needed to drop the lawsuit if he ever wanted to talk to me again. A court date was set, and my attorney started gathering evidence. I felt like I was reliving the nightmare all over again, going through old messages and documents to prove my case. My friends and colleagues were incredibly supportive, but the whole ordeal was taking a toll on me. Then, about a week before the court date, something unexpected happened. I got a call from my dad's lawyer, who said my dad wanted to drop the lawsuit and meet with me to apologize face-to-face. I was skeptical and scared, but after talking it over with my therapist and attorney, I agreed to meet him in a controlled environment with legal representation present. We met in a conference room at the law firm. My dad looked like a shadow of his former self, thinner, older, and visibly worn down. He started by apologizing profusely, admitting he had hit rock bottom and was trying to make amends. He said he had finally accepted responsibility for his actions and was ready to face the consequences. I listened, feeling a mix of anger and pity. I told him how much his actions had hurt me and how difficult it had been to rebuild my life. He cried, and for the first time, I saw genuine remorse in his eyes. He promised to seek help for his issues and to respect my boundaries moving forward. We came to an agreement. He would drop the lawsuit and sign a legally binding document promising to stay away from me and refrain from any further harassment. In return, I agreed to drop any pending charges against him, except for the restraining orders, which would remain in place. After the meeting, I felt a strange sense of relief. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a step toward closure. I knew our relationship would never be the same, but at least I could start to move on without the constant fear and stress. Back in Seattle, life started to feel more normal again. My credit score continued to improve, and I finally bought that car I'd been eyeing for so long. Work was going great, and my friendships were stronger than ever. Update 7. Following the meeting with my dad and the agreement we made, things actually started to settle down. He stayed true to his word and didn't try to contact me again. My mom, while still struggling with her own emotions, respected my need for distance and stopped pushing for reconciliation. It felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I threw myself into my new life in Seattle. My job has been going great, and I've even been promoted recently, which was a huge boost to my confidence. My friends here have become like family, and I've found a strong support network that makes me feel safe and valued. One of the most healing things I did was take a solo trip along the West Coast. I rented a car and drove from Seattle down to San Diego, stopping at all the beautiful spots along the way. It was a journey of reflection and self-discovery, giving me the time and space I needed to process everything. Watching the sunset over the Pacific, I felt a sense of calm I hadn't felt in years. Back home, my dad entered a rehabilitation program for his alcoholism and started seeing a therapist regularly. From what my mom tells me, he's making real progress. While I'm not ready to have him back in my life, I'm glad he's getting the help he needs. It's a step towards healing for him, and that's something I can respect from a distance. I also found a way to channel my experiences into something positive. I started volunteering at a local organization that helps victims of identity theft and domestic abuse. Sharing my story and helping others navigate their own struggles has been incredibly rewarding. It's given me a sense of purpose and helped me see that I'm not alone. As for my credit, it's almost completely restored. I was able to buy that car I wanted, and I'm even looking into buying a small condo in the city. It's a big step, but I feel ready for it. I'm building a future for myself, one that's free from the shadows of my past. Therapy has continued to be a cornerstone of my recovery. My therapist has been amazing, guiding me through the ups and downs and helping me rebuild my sense of self. I've learned so much about boundaries, self-care, and the importance of surrounding myself with positive influences. I've reconnected with some family members on my mom's side who have been incredibly supportive. It's been nice to have that familial connection without the toxicity that used to dominate my life. To everyone who's followed my story and offered support, thank you. Your advice, encouragement, and understanding have meant more than you could ever know.